as someone who considers himself still like a young man, it just was like, this is interesting. I wonder why this is. I wonder if it has to be this way, because the truth is, like, I know what we're doing at Emmanuel, and I know what we're on mission about at Emmanuel and everything like that. I have no clue what the mission of Church of the City is. I don't know what you guys are working towards right now. My guess is we're probably all pulling in exactly the same direction, but we're not really joining forces.
I think that's the interesting point. I think that last part is the interesting point, because, people don't know about each other, and there could be a shoemaker on the south side of town and a shoemaker on the north side of town, and they never bumped into each other, and they make shoes in a similar way. But since we as Christians believe there is a mission, like a big one, like capital M mission, like there is a great commission, it is interesting that as Protestants, sometimes we don't do a great job at intentionally networking among churches.
Right.
Because, and I think this is where I will bring some of my nerd bona fides to the table. I think in the 20th century, one of the things that evangelical Christians did is we borrowed corporate business models as a way of doing church. And so in borrowing those corporate business models, there were some really great things about that, growth and marketing and all this stuff, but there are also some drawbacks when you, as a group of people who are like, we follow a 2,000-year-old Jewish guy whose blood we drink. And so that's weird. Yep. And when you try to domesticate that into sort of like a Starbucks brand, there's going to be some interesting things that happen. You get mega churches and celebrity pastors and things that happen that maybe are not very Jesus-y or Christ-like. You also sometimes, I think, you get a spirit of, I don't have a better word than competitiveness, competition, like almost like, oh, what we got to get our market share, and not that you even have to think that out loud. It's almost like an unspoken, like, well, if we want to exist, we need to put something out there that people. So there is a consumer nature, like. The Catholic Church is much worse at doing consumery things than we are, and there's some good things about that and some bad things about that. In the Eastern Orthodox Church and other sort of more stodgy, traditional kind of. But, it's interesting. The Catholic Church reminds you a lot, in certain ways, of Rome. And Presbyterians, old school Presbyterians, remind you a lot of Scotland in the 15 and 1600s, right? Every church has a cultural genesis, has a culture out of which it sprang, and it carries some of that characteristic with it. So churches that are new churches, like Emmanuel probably didn't exist 100 years ago.
That's true.
And neither did Church of the City. Well, what cultural characteristics are going to take on the late 20th into early 21st century? Like technology, business culture, growth mindset, reaching people in a diverse population, utilizing certain tools, and, I said technology already, but you see what I'm saying? Like, it's going to feel like the culture out of which it was birthed. If you go to a church in where the Maasai live in the highlands of Africa, their churches aren't going to remind us a lot of our churches at all, because the culture, they herd cattle, they drink their blood and milk, there are Christians, there are Maasai Christians, but they just wouldn't do church anything like what we do church. So I think this is a long way of me saying I think it makes sense that in a very kind of fractured marketplace where there's a bunch of different guys trying to sell you sports drinks, and there's a bunch of different people trying to sell you makeup, and there's a bunch of, there's going to be a bunch of different Christians on their mission trying to, selling is the wrong word, but trying to promote a certain brand of Christianity, and they might be really similar to each other and just not know that each other exists.
Yes, that makes sense. Yeah, and I don't know that, I'm not saying that this is definitively wrong. Maybe it's just the way it is or the way it needs to be or whatever, but I do know is like, as we're putting the schedule together at Emmanuel, the one thing that we're not talking about is how our schedule overlaps with Church of the City and Cross Point and all these other churches in Nashville. You know what I mean? Like
there's no coordination.
That's right. And I think I know why it is because it's hard enough just to manage your own schedule and manage your own mission, and you know what I mean? And without kind of coordinating that with everyone else's. But as maybe maybe from the standpoint of an idealist, like maybe this is just something that doesn't happen entirely until the new earth or whatever, where we can all be coordinated. Yeah. Is that too much do you think that'll ever change?
I think you get certain things with coordination, like a large denominational structure. Like there's no Methodist church that's just doing whatever it wants. You know, there's no PC USA Church or PCA Church or UCC Church or Roman Catholic Church or Eastern Orthodox Church just going cowboy, right? This is our particular issue within American evangelical / non-denominational.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense.
So it's a particular issue for us. Now, we have a lot of advantages. We can be nimble and we can respond to cultural kind of goings on, and we can really relate to people. And people that come to my church, I meet people all the time that are like, this is my first week. And it's new and it can be fresh, and you can challenge, and you can do things that a big, huge Titanic style ship maybe can't do. But I think you put your finger on the pulse. One of the great drawbacks of all this is a lack of coordination, communication. And I think, so I'm going to be an optimist for a minute, and this is going to get a little kooky. I think if we believe in the Holy Spirit, maybe there is some kind of coordination. It's just not maybe not as like intentional as we might want it to be.
Yeah, maybe it's not as programmed. Maybe the programming doesn't come entirely from us.
I think it's possible. Like, what if there's a person out there that needed to go to Church of the City for a few weeks? They landed in Nashville. Their friend told them about it. They got kind of what we call fed, right? They got some good teaching and made some connections. And then their friend that they get close to, they become roommates with, invites them to Emmanuel, but that becomes their home church. I don't think that's a bad story.
Yeah, I agree.
Right? Like, and I'm sure there's dozens of permutations, hundreds of permutations of that among the different churches. We have a lot of people that come to our church that went to, what's the TV church?
Crosspoint?
Crosspoint. .tv, right? Like that they go to Crosspoint and it's fine, but they're looking for something maybe a little bit different.
Sure.
And then they come to our church, and I hope Crosspoint, the people at Crosspoint, are happy that they found a community and a place where Jesus is being followed and God is being worshipped, and hopefully that is the kind of sort of non-coordinated coordination.
Yes.
That now I'm not saying that's as good as it can be.
Yep.
I think there's definitely growth. And I would say another thing that Protestants, especially American Protestants, something that kind of quietly coordinates kind of in the background are these parachurch, like Passion, or these worship conventions that She Reads Truth publishers and podcasts, and, you know, Carlos Whitaker, AF Downs, all these people running around Nashville. They're kind of doing their own thing, but it's almost like this connective tissue in a way that their audiences go to dozens of different churches, and I think that's a good thing.
Yes.
Now, once again, I'm not pretending it's the best version that it could possibly be, but I think we do have a lot of these almost like entrepreneurial connective tissue. Now, it's not under the control of the local church, so sometimes that can be super frustrating, and it's not even under the influence necessarily of the local church, unless you've got like let's say my book sold. Let's say like 100,000 people read my book, and people are like, this guy's a person. I still submit to my leadership at my church. Like, if they had a problem with, like, if Matt Smallbone came up to me and was like, hey, this is, like he actually did with an earlier version of the book there, he was like, look, I know you're being yourself. I know you're being a little bit more edgy than the normal Bible guy, but like this phrase you're using might turn some people off. Mm-hmm. And I took that and I didn't like it, because I was like, I'm not being myself. Like, but then I was like, you know what? If like a little old lady in North Carolina would read the book if this phrase isn't in it, and not read the book if it's not, then it's like, can I lose the phrase?
Yep.
The phrase was, what the hell?
Matt Smallbone.